Hey guys, Coach Bullock here, Carson Marsh, joined by a very, very special guest, and Brandon Deutsch, coming here to talk about some NBA trade line grades, winners and losers. Brandon, out of what happened last week, who do you think is the biggest winner in the NBA? Who's got the biggest season change from a new player coming in?
Yeah, I think it's Miami. I think Miami had a lot of depth to begin with. I think the East is, as people say, the East is Nets. Like the Nets are going to win, but I personally think the East is much more winnable for other teams than the West. I think the West is the Lakers, and I don't think that's going to change. Miami adding Oladipo, what it did is although it got rid of Olynyk and a couple other guys, right? Who else was traded?
I think Chris Silva was traded, I think.
Yeah, like bums. I mean, Olynyk's good, but you know what I'm saying. They're not like
he's hit or miss. Right? Hit or miss.
Yeah, he's hit or miss. So they get Oladipo, who was finding his stride right before the trade deadline, who's going to be great. He fits the mold. He's hardworking, elite scorer, can play some defense. And I mean, he's tough. And you put him with Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn. I mean, you could go all day. They got a lot of depth. They're tough and they play defense and they got better. So that's definitely a loss for the Nets and a win for the Heat. The Heat are the biggest winners because they really put themselves into a position to contend for a title and beat the Brooklyn Nets, because I think they're matched up best to do that with Oladipo now.
So I'm a Heat fan. You obviously know that. But
yeah,
what do you think about the Nets? They add LaMarcus Aldridge, a guy who the Heat were really trying to get, a guy that the Heat could use, especially at the 4. How do you think that lineup will – I mean, you got a lot of star power on that team. You got Blake Griffin too. How do you think those pieces fall together? Do you think they will mesh in the playoffs? Do you think that they're going to be the contenders that everyone now expects them to be?
I think they will be, but I don't think it's because of LA and Blake. I think those guys are pretty much washed. They're just fragments of what they used to be. I think it's just the machine, the three-headed monster, Harden, Kyrie, KD. And they got Claxton's playing great. Joe Harris is playing great. So, I mean, they're going to be contenders. I don't think LA, like LaMarcus Aldridge or Blake Griffin, really does much. I mean, those guys don't play D anymore. They're already the best offensive team in the league, possibly ever. So, I mean, I don't think that adding those two guys, everyone made a big deal because these are names that have been all-stars, guys that have been all-stars in the past. But this really wasn't, they didn't get that much better. They just got better offensive weapons off the bench now. Because Blake can still play offensively, and so can LaMarcus Aldridge. Just their defense sucks. And I think that's why they're susceptible to losing to a team like the Heat. That's tougher.
Well, so you mentioned names, and that's what this Nets team is. They're a bunch of names. So I guess the better question is, do you think Steve Nash will be able to get all of these names to mesh well together? Let's say they go down. I mean, they're probably expected to sweep every team in the East that they play. Not saying they will, but with the star power they have, with the name value they have, do you think Steve Nash, let's say they go down, let's just say to the Heat, 2-1, 2-0. Do you think that Steve Nash will be able to collect, or maybe even Kyrie or KD, whoever the leader of this team is, if there is one?
The team, right?
What? Yeah. Well, I guess so.
They're all in the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people are taking this mesh value or underappreciating the fact that, I mean, this team could unravel easily, especially with a guy like Steve Nash who doesn't have any coaching experience. He has, I mean, I'm not going to call them hotheads, but you have Kyrie Irving who, can kill coaches.
Just a lot of off the field issues for sure. Yeah.
So do you think that this team will do you think they're a lock to make the conference finals at least?
Oh yeah. 100%. They've got too good of an offense not 100% because Miami could be a 4 seed. They could be a 1 seed. They could play each other in the Eastern semis and that could get mixed up. But other than Miami, I don't see Philadelphia or Milwaukee beating them in a 7-game series. It's definitely possible. And to answer your question, if they're down 2-0 in a series against any of these teams, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Miami Heat, even if they're on the road, even if they play those first 2 games at home and lose, They have so much talent. They're going to be able to, every series they play, win or lose. Even if they were to lose a series, it'd be in 7 games. It wouldn't be less than that. Never. Not even to the Lakers. If they played the Lakers in the finals and AD, LeBron, and Drummond are all healthy, that series is still going 7 games just on the Nets' offense. I don't think it's particularly Steve Nash. Like, I think D'Antoni's coaching that team. Basically, that's that offensive scheme. He is possibly the best offensive-minded coach in the league. Again, no defense. But will they be able to come back? I mean, yeah, their offense is so explosive. You got arguably the second best player in the NBA, and Kevin Durant, who's missed 2 months almost.
A lot of time.
And they win almost every game without him. So you put them back on the floor, they're definitely a threat. And Harden's playing out of this world. Kyrie's playing out of this world. Kyrie could sit out the rest of the season and they'd probably still make the finals. Obviously they could lose to Miami, but they definitely have a shot and they will bring it all together. And it's going to be tough to win any games against that offense for sure.
So, I mean, that being said, I think what I'm hearing is the Nets are a winner of this trade deadline because of what they added. I mean, they weren't, I guess actually they're a threat for any free agent nowadays. But so we have the Heat and the Nets as winners. Let's talk about another splash across the conference pond and the Lakers at Andre Drummond, perhaps the best rebounder in the league. How do you think that affects this team? Especially, I mean, they don't have AD right now, LeBron, missing some valuable players. How do you think this affects the team in the short term and then the long term?
Long term, Drummond isn't going to re-sign. But again, this was made. When
I mean long term, I mean the whole season. Because LeBron and AD will come back before the playoffs. Yeah, I'm saying short term, regular season, long term, full season.
Well, that's a big if. I mean, it depends really how healthy LeBron and Davis could be. I mean, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that AD's injury is worse than they say. Originally they were saying it was 3-4 weeks. Like, he definitely at least strained or had a minor tear in his Achilles. Like, that was bad. That was a very similar situation to what happened with Kevin Durant, and they brought him back too early. And what happened? So I don't know. It depends if they're healthy. If they're healthy, it's a home run, because their big issue was they signed Marc Gasol, and it looked like a great deal at the time. He regressed dramatically. He's terrible. He shouldn't play another minute in the NBA. I mean, he's god awful. I mean, he could pass, but they lost interior presence. I mean, Montrezl Harrell's 6'8". He's not going to be able to defend bigger guys. Mm-hmm. They'd have problems with Zubac even in the Clippers and stuff like that, right? So I think it's a home run because Drummond brings an elite defensive presence with his rebounding, shot block, and even steals, 1.2 or 1.3 steals per game. So he has a bunch of steals too. And his offensive game has completely, it's been completely better this year. If you look at the first 15 games that the Cavaliers played before all their issues started happening, they made the trade for Allen and kind of put Drummond to the side first 15, 20 games. They were winning as him being the number 1 or 2 option with Colin Sexton. They were winning a lot of games because realistically, his offensive game has gotten better. And he doesn't have to be 1 or 2 or even 3, the first, second, or third option on the Lakers. He could be the 4th on offense and just get rebounds on defense and provide defense. That's what they needed. I think their shooters are going to be great. I don't think they need to add a shooter. I think KCP has experience. So do the rest of the guys off the bench, Markieff, Caruso. This is a home run because Drummond was the guy they needed, arguably the greatest buyout player to be available ever. I mean, the guy should be a perennial all-star if any of his teams were ever winning. And I mean, look, they're definitely the favorites if LeBron and AD can be healthy over the Nets 100%.
So it's funny you bring up the Cavaliers. I mean, they beat the Nets earlier on in the season. I mean, Drummond too was a great player with the Pistons. I mean, way back in the day. But do you think that the Lakers are still the clear-cut favorite to make it out of the West?
Yes, if they're healthy. I mean, that's a big if. That's a big if. If LeBron and Anthony Davis are not fully healthy, then it's Clippers, Suns, Jazz, even Jazz. I mean, I don't think the Jazz could win more than one playoff series without getting a third star. I'm still skeptical of them. But
2014,
yeah,
2015 Hawks vibes I get with that team. With the
yeah. I mean,
Jazz.
who was the best player on that team? Paul Millsap at the time, Al Horford. I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't a great team. But yeah, I mean, look, the Lakers are like Stephen A. Smith said on First Take earlier this morning. He said this makes them, if they are healthy, or if AD is even 80% healthy, because he's gonna be 100% healthy when he gets to the playoffs. He's LeBron,
Of
he's
course.
the greatest in the world. So if AD is 80% healthy, yeah, I mean, no team's beating them, especially with their height now, because that's what happened last year. They had Howard, they had McGee, and they were able to dominate bigger teams because they were bigger. And then when they faced smaller teams, they went small. They had AD playing the center. So that's kind of something similar to what they'll do with Drummond. Drummond's just a way better version of Dwight Howard, like 10 times 10. And they don't have a JaVale McGee. But I mean, they are the clear-cut favorites for sure. And I'd say the Clippers are probably second.
Suns look good too. But we have mentioned the winners. Let's talk about the losers. These are the people that didn't make such a necessary splash. Earlier before the show, you were telling me that one of the guys or one of the teams that you were rather disappointed in with the Celtics, not adding anybody to help Jalen and Jason. So what do you think the Celtics need to do to kind of rewrite this almost lost season right now?
Definitely. They can't rewrite it. Carson, it's over. It's over for them. I mean, they're a two-man team. They have no depth whatsoever. I mean, I guess Peyton Pritchard's okay. Play Taco Fall, whoever's their player development. I mean, these guys are matchup problems. I have an issue with why guys like Boban and Taco aren't playing 20 minutes a game. You could slow down the pace of the game and those guys could dominate. So there's obvious issues within the Celtics organization. Danny Ainge is not a guy people want to come and play for anymore after what he did to Isaiah Thomas. This is really affecting people because at the deadline, they're not going to go for guys who aren't going to re-sign with them a lot of times, right? So, I mean, and that's because of the way Isaiah Thomas was treated when he almost won the MVP. You know, he was in top 5 consideration. They were great. And he got hurt and they were just like, you know, got rid of him and got Kyrie. And that turned out to be I'm not going to say the word because it's explicit, but that wasn't good, right? So they have serious issues. They could have gotten Drummond, but Drummond was to the Lakers. I mean, people knew that weeks ago that he was going to try and go to the Lakers. He was in LA for 2 weeks training with the team pretty much. They won't say that, but he had private workouts with Laker trainers for sure. And I mean, once they struck out on him, I mean, they need a guy like Drummond. Drummond would have been the clear guy. If Drummond would have went to the Celtics, they would be a serious threat to come out of the Eastern Conference with 2 superstars and a star. But they don't have that star. Kemba's been inconsistent. And I mean, who they have? I mean, Mo Wagner was a decent addition, but they really lost. They needed something big to make the season happen. I kind of think they just gave up and said the Nets are going to beat us either way. I think that's what happened. So they're a loser. And I think the Rockets are big time losers because they got nothing for James Harden, basically, it turned out, right? I mean,
they also got nothing for Oladipo as well. They got nothing.
Well, that's the whole point.
Exactly.
Because, you know, they got Oladipo basically for Harden and a couple picks, and then they got rid of Oladipo for Kelly Olynyk.
Well, but they didn't have to get rid of Oladipo for that little. They got him for Kelly Olynyk and what, a second round pick swap?
It's because Pat Riley is a genius. He made them go last minute.
Pat Riley, he has what Danny doesn't. Let's just say that.
Well, people want to play for him. I mean, there are some people that intentionally, like Jimmy is one of the toughest guys in the league. Perfect Miami poster guy, right? So is Oladipo. Oladipo is tough. Guys like Kyrie would never set foot in Miami. Neither would Harden. And that's why they didn't go after Harden. Really. I mean, they kind of did, but not really because he doesn't play defense.
It could have been bad. The Harden Miami, I mean, I don't know looking back if you could have packaged Duncan and Tyler to go after him. But I mean, Harden just seems like the guy. I don't know if you want him in Miami. That being said, maybe him in Brooklyn with everything being shut down could be fine too, and with other players to hold him accountable. But I mean, the strip clubs in Miami may be better than the ones in Houston. So I don't know if you're going to have James Harden coming to practice early every day and following the Heat way that I feel like is so enticing to a lot of players who want to just give it their all.
He's a drama queen, drama king, whatever you want to call him. He's a prima donna. He wants his way. I mean, I think his mom's his agent. I don't even think he has really an agent. He wants everything his way, and that's fine. He's good enough.
Seems like he could fit in with the Nets. Seems like he would fit in well with the Nets.
He's great with the Nets. It's a media market. He's got everything made for him. He can get 12 to 15 assists a game because he has Kyrie and KD, and he can score, and he has a chance to win a title. That's perfect. But, I mean, Houston really screwed up. They got a couple first-round picks, but I also think Philadelphia screwed up early on. Even though their team is really good, why didn't they trade Ben Simmons and even a first-round pick for Harden? I still question that today.
What about a deadly matchup?
Exactly. If you have Embiid and Harden and you have Tobias Harris,
if you have Harden shooting up threes and then Embiid, who's been playing at an MVP level, obviously before his injury, getting the boards, I mean, who's going to stop that team?
No one. And that's why I don't get it, because Morey loved Harden. He's called Harden, because that was his guy for years. He's the GM of the Rockets. He says that Harden is the best scorer of all time. He said that in interviews. You can look it up. Best, most efficient scorer of all time. Really? Because Simmons can't score. So, I mean, is his
also can't shoot any threes.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of the most overrated players in the NBA. I get he impacts the team. He's great. He's a perennial all-star just because of his defense and playmaking abilities. But you're telling me you won't give up Simmons and a first-round pick for Harden? So they lost too, because they weren't able to get much at the deadline either. And I don't see them even being as good as they are with Simmons and Embiid being able to match up against the Nets. But the Rockets for sure lost because they basically got nothing except a couple first-rounders and a second-rounder for Harden when they could have gotten Simmons or kept LeVert and Allen. Even I don't know how Allen ended up to the Cavs. To this day, I don't know why the Cavs were included, and I don't know how he ended up in the Cavs. But the Cavs stole him basically from Brooklyn.
So we might be adding the Cavs to the winning list too, I think.
But that wasn't from. Yeah, I mean, way before the deadline. Yeah, maybe. Definitely. And they're going to get a top 6 or 7 pick and arguably the best draft top to bottom in 20 years, or at least since 03. Yeah. So I mean, they won, of course. But
so you talked about the 76ers, kind of almost like a loser by association thing. What do you think about the Bucks? Do you think they lost this trade deadline? Not that they needed to go get anybody. I mean, we see big additions, Drew Holiday earlier this year or earlier before the year started. Do you think they're losers just by the fact that, I mean, the Nets have gotten better, the Heat have gotten better? I mean, you say the 76ers are losers because of that. Do you think the Bucks fall into that category as well?
No, I actually think they're winners. I think PJ Tucker is a great addition. I really do. He's hard-nosed. He's tough. And in the playoffs, they got him for the playoffs. He's going to be a guy, And I think that Jeff Teague, another guy that they just signed today, cleared waivers. And he was waived, I think, by Orlando after he was traded from Boston or something. And, I mean, he's going to be a great guy off the bench to have. I mean, Bledsoe, look at how good this Bucks team was last year. Bledsoe's god-awful this year in New Orleans. He's awful. Nickeil Alexander-Walker plays ahead of him now. Bledsoe won't even touch the floor really anymore because he's just not good. Lonzo Ball and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are way better. So, I mean, you got to look at it like you get rid of Bledsoe, you get Drew, arguably a top 3 perimeter defender in the league, right? Especially at the guard position, for sure, probably the best. And then, I mean, you have Drew, Middleton gets better, DiVincenzo gets better, and you bring in PJ Tucker. And I mean, I got to give DiVincenzo some props. That's my birthday buddy, same birthday, January 31st. Shout out. So that's my guy. But PJ Tucker and then Jeff Teague. I mean, this is definitely a team. I mean, look, if you look at the playoffs last year, Wes Matthews was terrible. And look at what he's doing in the Lakers. Nothing. I call him Brick City. I mean, he might get better, but that was detrimental to them in the playoffs last year. So you get rid of Wes Matthews. They could spread the ball around with Drew, Giannis, Middleton, DiVincenzo. I think it was a blessing not getting Bogdanovich because they got to keep DiVincenzo, who's turned out to be really good. So they definitely won with the buyout market, and they didn't really need to do much at the deadline. They'll be in the Eastern semis at least, and we'll see what they can do. I think Giannis is angry. I think he wants to prove to people he's the best player in the NBA, or at least one of them. And I think that they're going to have a real shot, and it starts against the Nets. They're going to be angry. Don't be surprised if Milwaukee wins the first 2 games against Brooklyn before Brooklyn can start kind of moving in the right direction, if they so play in the Eastern semis or finals. So they're a winner for sure.
While the seeding, I mean, changes a lot in the East. What do you have a bold prediction? Who do you think will go farther, the 76ers or the Bucks?
That's a toss-up. I think they get eliminated in the same round, because I think the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference are the Heat and the Brooklyn and the Nets. Not the Brooklyn. That's the Brooklyn Nets. So assuming Brooklyn and Miami don't play each other, both of those organizations will beat the Sixers and the Bucks in the Eastern semis. But those 4 teams are getting to the semis. There's not going to be any. I mean, Charlotte could have been a team that could scare some people, but LaMelo Ball got hurt. So that's a team that's just out. The Knicks have been losing games, and even if they slide in, they're not going to win a playoff series.
Lost to the Heat today.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy has been playing great. I mean, that's my MVP so far right now.
We love to hear that. We absolutely love to hear that, especially in an MVP race that is completely wide open with all these injuries. Maybe except for Jokic. I mean, other than
Jokic
that,
is great. Jokic is putting. If Jokic's team had 35 wins and they were number 1 in the West, it'd already be a done deal. They'd win. He'd win the MVP. Again, it's a lot of what the guy does for the team. They're a very talented team in Denver, and so is Miami. But Jimmy, that team can't win a game without Jimmy. He comes back and they start winning almost every single game. And when he plays bad, they lose every single game, regardless of how well Bam plays or anybody else. So,
I agree. But some very interesting takes from, I guess, our NBA outsider. I'm going to dub you Brandon Deutsch on this one. Definitely going to have you a lot more on here. Got to get your basketball knowledge on this. But as always, I'm Carson Marsh. Thanks so much, Brandon Deutsch, for jumping on. And question will lock. And hope to have you back soon.
of course, appreciate it. It was really fun and great.